What if everything you've been told about happiness is a lie? In a world obsessed with positivity and relentless self-improvement, Mark Manson offers a refreshing counterargument. Stop trying so hard to be happy all the time. You can find this life-changing book through the link in the video description below. Our culture has fed us a steady diet of feel-good maxims. Stay positive, visualize success, believe you're special, and you'll achieve extraordinary happiness. But these well-intentioned ideas have backfired, leaving us more anxious, depressed, and overwhelmed than ever before. The truth is, we can't all be exceptional. That's not how averages work. The subtle art of not giving a F*** isn't about apathy. It's about being selective with what you care about. We all have a limited amount of concern, worry, and energy to give. Many of us waste these precious resources on things that don't deserve them. Other people's opinions, minor inconveniences, or circumstances beyond our control. Manson argues that the pursuit of positive experience is itself a negative experience. Conversely, acceptance of negative experience is actually a positive experience. The more desperately you try to be happy and positive, the less happy and positive you'll be. This creates what he calls the feedback loop from hell: feeling bad about feeling bad, anxious about feeling anxious, angry about feeling angry. The key is to let go of trying to be happy all the time. Our society's obsession with being extraordinary creates unnecessary suffering. The truth is, most of us are average at most things we do, and that's perfectly fine. Real growth comes from accepting your mediocrity. When you embrace being average, you free yourself from the pressure to constantly prove your worth. Values are at the core of Manson's philosophy. Good values are reality-based, socially constructive, and controllable. Bad values are superstitious, socially destructive, and not controllable. For example, honesty is a good value because it's within your control and benefits society. Popularity is a bad value because it depends on others' opinions, which you can't control. A powerful concept in the book is entitlement. We've been raised to believe we're all special and deserve greatness without putting in the work. This entitlement manifests in two ways: as grandiosity, I'm awesome and everyone else sucks, or as victimhood, I suck and everyone else is awesome. Both are toxic and prevent genuine growth. The reality is that we're all ordinary in most ways, with perhaps a few extraordinary qualities. Taking responsibility for everything in your life is crucial, not blame, but responsibility. Even when something isn't your fault, it's still your responsibility to deal with it. This is empowering, not depressing. When you take responsibility, you take back control. Victim mentality might feel good temporarily, but it surrenders your power to change your situation. Manson discusses what he calls the disease of more. When we achieve success, we often feel compelled to raise the bar, creating a never-ending cycle of dissatisfaction. The solution is commitment to something greater than yourself: relationships, causes, creative work. Commitment means accepting the limitations that come with your choices. Uncertainty is an unavoidable part of life. No matter how much we plan or prepare, we can never eliminate all risks. The desire for certainty, to know absolutely that we're right, leads to closed-mindedness and dogmatism. Embracing uncertainty allows us to grow, learn, and evolve our beliefs. The moment you stop questioning yourself is the moment you stop growing. Manson describes failure as necessary for growth. We're often afraid to fail because we tie our self-worth to our achievements. But failure is how we learn our boundaries and capabilities. It's not just something to be tolerated, it's something to be embraced. The most successful people in any field are those who have failed the most times. The willingness to fail repeatedly is what ultimately leads to success. Death is a central theme in the book. Our mortality gives meaning to our lives. By confronting the reality that we will die, we clarify what truly matters to us. Most of our fears and anxieties dissolve when faced with our mortality. Manson encourages us to contemplate our death regularly, not in a morbid way, but as a tool for perspective. When you realize your time is limited, you become far more selective about where you invest it. The do something principle states that action isn't just the effect of motivation, it's also the cause of it. Don't wait to feel motivated before acting. Act first, and motivation follows. This breaks the cycle of procrastination. Even small actions create momentum that leads to bigger actions. When facing challenges, the simple act of doing something, anything, is often enough to break through mental barriers. Happiness comes from solving problems, not avoiding them. Problems never stop, they merely get exchanged for better problems. The mark of a successful life isn't the absence of struggle, but the presence of good struggles. People who are satisfied with their lives aren't people without problems. They're people who enjoy solving the problems they have. Our culture promotes victimhood as a way to gain attention and avoid responsibility. But this mindset is deeply destructive. When you see yourself as a victim, you surrender your agency. You place the solution to your problems outside yourself. Taking responsibility isn't about blame, it's about responsibility, your ability to respond. Even in horrible situations beyond your control, you control how you respond. Self-improvement isn't about constant positivity. Real growth often comes from confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Growth is painful because it involves acknowledging our flaws and limitations. But this discomfort is necessary. The people who improve the most are those willing to confront what they'd rather avoid. Trust is crucial in relationships. Manson argues that the only way to trust someone is to trust them. This sounds circular, but his point is profound. Trust isn't something earned through a checklist of behaviors. It's a choice we make. When we choose to trust, we create the conditions for trustworthy behavior. The willingness to be vulnerable, to risk being hurt, is the foundation of meaningful connection. Our minds are wired to compare ourselves to others constantly. In the age of social media, this tendency has become supercharged. We're exposed to curated highlights of others' lives, creating impossible standards. Manson advises letting go of these comparisons. Your success and happiness exist independently of others. Focus on your own metrics for success rather than external validation. Freedom comes with responsibility. Many people desire freedom without understanding this connection. True freedom isn't the absence of commitments or responsibilities. It's choosing your commitments and responsibilities. When you reject all responsibility, you don't become free. You become a slave to your impulses, emotions, and circumstances. The concept of saying no is powerful in Manson's philosophy. Saying no to most things allows you to say an emphatic yes to what truly matters. Many of us overcommit out of guilt, obligation, or fear of missing out. But this spreads our energy too thin. Being selective about your commitments isn't selfish. It's necessary for making meaningful contributions where they count. Conventional wisdom says we should always strive for more money, more status, more achievements. But more is an endless treadmill. The question isn't what do I want from life, but what pain am I willing to sustain? Everyone wants the rewards of success, but few are willing to endure the difficulties required to achieve it. Choose your struggles wisely because they define your path. Manson introduces the concept of fault versus responsibility. Something might not be your fault, but it can still be your responsibility. For example, if someone rear-ends your car, it's not your fault, but dealing with the insurance and repairs is still your responsibility. Taking responsibility for everything in your life, regardless of fault, is empowering. It places you in the driver's seat rather than making you a passenger in your own life. Many people fear rejection and criticism, so they avoid putting themselves out there. But all meaningful growth requires risk. You can't be an important presence in anyone's life without also being a potential absence. You can't make a difference without the possibility of causing a problem. The trick isn't to avoid criticism. It's to care about the right kind of criticism from the right people. Our consumer culture tries to convince us that we're special and deserving of exceptional treatment. This entitlement thinking is toxic. Real confidence comes not from believing you're exceptional, but from accepting that you're not and being comfortable with that reality. When you no longer need to prove your worth to others or yourself, you achieve a kind of freedom that no external validation can provide. The concept of being present is often misunderstood. It's not about ignoring your past or future. It's about engaging fully with your current experience without judgment. Most of our suffering comes from resistance to what is. We fight against reality instead of accepting it as our starting point. Acceptance isn't resignation. It's the first step toward meaningful change. Anxiety often comes from believing we can control outcomes that are ultimately beyond our control. We tie our self-worth to results rather than efforts. Manson suggests focusing on process over outcome. You can control your actions, but not always the results of those actions. When you define success by what's within your control, your values, efforts, and choices, you find a more sustainable form of satisfaction. Our identities can become prisons when we cling to them too rigidly. The labels we give ourselves, political, professional, personal, can prevent growth when we're unwilling to question or revise them. A healthy identity is fluid and evolving. The willingness to be wrong about yourself is just as important as the willingness to be wrong about the world. Growth requires letting go of who you think you are to become who you might be. Manson talks about the hedonic treadmill, our tendency to quickly adapt to improvements in our circumstances, returning to our baseline level of happiness. Getting what we want doesn't make us happier for long. The solution isn't achieving more but wanting what we already have. Gratitude isn't just a feel-good practice. It's a perspective shift that fundamentally alters how we experience life. Social media has created unprecedented opportunities for comparison and insecurity. We're exposed to highlight reels of others' lives, leading to what Manson calls feedback loop hell. We feel inadequate because we're comparing our complete reality to others' carefully curated presentations. The solution isn't necessarily avoiding social media, but developing a healthier relationship with it, using it intentionally rather than compulsively. Many people seek happiness through avoidance of discomfort, but this strategy backfires. Comfort, when pursued as an end in itself, leads to a kind of stagnation. Growth requires discomfort. The people who embrace difficulty, who voluntarily expose themselves to challenges, develop resilience that serves them in all areas of life. Don't ask, "What makes me happy?" but "What's worth suffering for?" Manson discusses the importance of healthy boundaries in relationships. Many people either have rigid, impenetrable boundaries or no boundaries at all. Healthy boundaries are permeable and situational. They keep harmful influences out while allowing connection in. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. When you communicate your limits clearly, you create the conditions for deeper trust. Our attention is our most valuable resource, yet we give it away freely to whatever shouts loudest. Manson advises becoming more intentional about what you give your attention to. Much of our anxiety comes from spreading our attention too thin or focusing it on things beyond our control. Simplifying your life, reducing information input, and consciously choosing your priorities creates mental space for what matters most. The pursuit of certainty is at the root of much suffering. We want guarantees, definitive answers, and absolute security. But life doesn't offer these things. Learning to be comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity is crucial for mental health. The most fulfilled people aren't those who have all the answers but those who have made peace with the questions. Manson draws a distinction between constructive and destructive pain. Constructive pain leads to growth, the soreness after a workout, the emotional stretching of stepping outside your comfort zone. Destructive pain causes harm without benefit, staying in abusive relationships, engaging in self-destructive behaviors. Not all pain is bad, and not all pleasure is good. The key is discerning which discomforts lead to growth and which lead to destruction. Many of us live as if we're immortal, putting off important conversations, risks, and changes. Contemplating our mortality isn't morbid, it's clarifying. When you regularly remind yourself that your time is limited, your priorities come into sharper focus. The question becomes not, what would make me happy, but what would make my limited time meaningful? Society often confuses attention with importance. We believe that what's discussed most must matter most, but there's an inverse relationship between what's sensationalized in media and what actually impacts your daily life. Most of what's urgent isn't important, and most of what's important isn't urgent. Developing the discernment to tell the difference is crucial for mental health. Self-awareness is a double-edged sword. Too little, and we're blind to our patterns and problems. Too much, and we become paralyzed by overthinking. Manson advocates for balanced self-awareness, enough to recognize and address your issues, but not so much that you become self-obsessed. The goal isn't to eliminate all flaws, but to work constructively with them. Conventional success metrics, wealth, status, power, are often poor indicators of fulfillment. Manson suggests developing personal metrics that align with your values. These might include the quality of your relationships, your contribution to others, or your growth in areas you care about. When your metrics are internally rather than externally defined, you become less vulnerable to social pressure and comparison. Many people are trapped in what Manson calls victimhood chic, the trendy adoption of victim status for social currency. While acknowledging real victimization is important, identifying primarily as a victim grants power to your oppressors and circumstances. Taking responsibility isn't accepting blame, it's claiming your power to respond. Even in the worst circumstances, how you interpret and respond to events remains your choice. The desire for certainty leads many to embrace dogmatic ideologies. We'd rather have answers we know are simplistic than embrace the complexity of reality. Manson encourages intellectual humility, the willingness to say, I don't know and I might be wrong. This isn't weakness but strength. The most intelligent people aren't those who have all the answers but those comfortable with uncertainty. Our emotional reactions are information, not commands. When we feel anger, jealousy, or fear, we don't have to act on these emotions. Manson advocates for emotional responsibility, acknowledging your feelings without being controlled by them. Just because you feel something doesn't make it true or require action. Learning to observe your emotions without immediate reaction creates space for thoughtful response. Many seek happiness through accumulation, more possessions, achievements, or experiences. But true happiness often comes through subtraction, removing unnecessary commitments, simplifying your life, and letting go of toxic relationships. Sometimes the path to fulfillment isn't doing more, but doing less with greater focus and presence. The concept of enough is radical in our culture of more. Manson suggests that defining enough in wealth, achievement, possessions creates freedom. Without this definition, we're on an endless treadmill of acquisition and striving. Having clear, enough points allows you to direct energy toward what truly matters rather than perpetually chasing the next level. Love isn't just a feeling but a practice and commitment. It involves choosing someone's well-being, even when difficult. Many relationships fail because we expect perpetual positive feelings without understanding that love requires work and sacrifice. True connection comes from seeing another person's flaws and choosing them anyway, not from an idealized fantasy of perfection. Manson distinguishes between fault and responsibility. Something may not be your fault, you didn't cause it, but it can still be your responsibility, you must deal with it. When you take responsibility for everything in your life, regardless of fault, you reclaim your power. This isn't about blame, but about recognizing your agency in responding to circumstances, however unfair they may be. Many people confuse honesty with cruelty. Being honest doesn't mean being harsh or insensitive. True honesty comes from a place of care and respect. When we withhold difficult truths from others out of kindness, we often do them a disservice. Constructive honesty, delivered with empathy and at appropriate times, is essential for growth and authentic connection. Success often requires rejection of opportunities, relationships, and paths that don't align with your values. Many people struggle not because they lack opportunities, but because they say yes to too many things. Learning to say no confidently and without guilt creates space for what matters most. Every yes is implicitly a no to something else, so choose your yeses carefully. Our need for approval keeps many of us small. We alter our opinions, suppress our true selves, and avoid risks for fear of judgment. Manson suggests that the willingness to be disliked is essential for authenticity and meaningful contribution. When you accept that not everyone will approve of you, you gain the freedom to live according to your values rather than others' expectations. Much of our suffering comes from resistance to painful realities. We fight against what is, creating additional layers of pain. Acceptance isn't resignation, it's acknowledging reality as your starting point. You can't effectively change what you haven't first accepted. Paradoxically, accepting difficult circumstances often creates the mental space needed to transform them. Our culture romanticizes passion, but commitment is often more important. Passion is fleeting and unreliable. Commitment carries you through difficulties when passion fades. The most successful people aren't necessarily the most passionate but the most committed, those willing to show up consistently, even when they don't feel like it. Meaningful achievement requires sustained effort through both inspiration and drudgery. The fear of missing out FOMO drives many to spread themselves too thin. We say yes to everything out of anxiety that we might miss something important. But this approach guarantees mediocrity across the board. Making significant progress in any area requires the courage to miss out on many other things. The willingness to focus, to deliberately limit your options, is essential for excellence and depth. Manson writes about what he calls the tyranny of exceptionalism. Our culture tells us we should be extraordinary in every way, creating impossible standards that guarantee dissatisfaction. The reality is that most of us are average at most things, exceptional in perhaps one or two areas if we're fortunate, and this is perfectly fine. Accepting your ordinariness in most areas creates freedom to pursue what genuinely matters to you. Many of us struggle with perfectionism, the belief that anything less than perfect is unacceptable. This mindset paralyzes us, preventing action out of fear of failure. Manson advocates for good enough thinking, doing the best you can with the time and resources available, then moving on. Perfection is unattainable and pursuing it leads to procrastination, anxiety, and ultimately, inaction. Contrary to popular belief, having more options doesn't always make us happier. The paradox of choice suggests that beyond a certain point, additional options create anxiety rather than satisfaction. We become paralyzed by decision-making and second-guess our choices. Intentionally limiting your options often leads to greater contentment and decisiveness. Our culture celebrates individualism, but connection is essential for well-being. Manson emphasizes the importance of community and belonging. The most satisfied people aren't isolated achievers, but those embedded in meaningful relationships. Technology has connected us digitally while often disconnecting us emotionally. Prioritizing deep, authentic connections, even at the expense of individual achievement, is crucial for lasting fulfillment. Much of our anxiety comes from the belief that we should always feel good, but negative emotions serve important purposes. Anger signals violation of boundaries, fear warns of potential danger, sadness helps process loss. Manson suggests that emotional health isn't the absence of negative emotions, but the ability to process them constructively. Learning to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it is a crucial life skill. The pursuit of happiness is paradoxical. The more directly we chase it, the more elusive it becomes. Happiness is generally a byproduct of engagement with meaningful activities and relationships rather than an end in itself. When we focus on purpose, contribution, and growth, happiness often arrives as a natural consequence. Many people live in constant anticipation, always looking forward to the next achievement, acquisition, or experience. But this mindset robs us of present satisfaction. The future never arrives. It's always just ahead. Learning to find fulfillment in the journey rather than perpetually deferring it to some future state is essential for contentment. In a world of increasing distraction, presence is a radical act. Our attention is constantly pulled in multiple directions by notifications, media, and busy work. Manson emphasizes the importance of focused attention, being fully engaged with whatever you're doing, whether work, conversation, or rest. This presence isn't just about productivity. It's about experiencing your life as it happens rather than missing it through distraction. Wealth, fame, and status don't correlate strongly with happiness beyond meeting basic needs. Manson highlights research showing that after achieving financial security, additional wealth produces diminishing returns on well-being. The most reliable predictors of happiness are quality relationships, autonomy, competence, and purpose, none of which necessarily require exceptional success or wealth. In the digital age, comparisons have become ubiquitous and toxic. Social media exposes us to the highlights of countless lives, creating impossible standards. Manson encourages limiting these comparisons by reducing media consumption and focusing on your own journey. The only meaningful comparison is to your previous self. Are you growing and improving by your own standards, not others? Many relationships fail not from lack of love but from poor communication. Manson emphasizes the importance of honest, direct communication, expressing needs and boundaries clearly rather than expecting others to intuit them. This includes both speaking honestly and listening actively. Authentic connection requires the courage to be vulnerable about what you truly think, feel, and need. Our brains are wired to focus on threats and problems, an evolutionary advantage that becomes a liability in modern life. Negativity bias causes us to dwell on criticism while overlooking praise, to remember failures more vividly than successes. Manson doesn't suggest trying to eliminate this bias, but becoming aware of it and deliberately counterbalancing it with gratitude and perspective. The concept of antifragility suggests that some systems don't just withstand stress, but actually benefit from it. Manson applies this to personal development. The most resilient people aren't those who avoid challenges, but those who use them as fuel for growth. This isn't just bouncing back from difficulty, but becoming stronger because of it, turning obstacles into opportunities for development. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of paradox, seemingly contradictory truths that coexist. Manson incorporates several paradoxes. We gain by letting go, become strong by admitting weakness, find freedom through commitment, achieve success through embracing failure. Learning to hold these tensions rather than seeking simple either-or answers is part of emotional maturity. Our culture celebrates individual achievement, but interdependence is reality. None of us are self-made. We all rely on countless others, from those who grow our food to those who maintain infrastructure. Manson suggests that acknowledging this interdependence isn't weakness but wisdom. True strength comes not from pretending independence, but from recognizing our connections and cultivating gratitude for them. The courage to be disliked is crucial for authentic living. Many of us compromise our values, suppress our opinions, and avoid necessary confrontations out of fear of disapproval. But living to please others inevitably leads to resentment and disconnection from your authentic self. The willingness to be judged, criticized, and sometimes rejected is the price of integrity and meaningful connection. Finally, Manson encourages us to regularly ask, "What if I'm wrong?" This simple question creates space for growth, prevents dogmatism, and fosters genuine connection. When we hold our beliefs and opinions lightly, recognizing their provisional rather than absolute truths, we remain open to new information and perspectives. This intellectual humility is the foundation of lifelong learning and wisdom. Thank you for watching this summary of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F***ck by Mark Manson. If you found value in these insights, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel for more book summaries, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. What resonated with you most from Manson's philosophy? Which ideas will you apply to your own life? Remember, the book contains many more detailed examples and insights than I could cover here, so consider checking out the full version using the link in the description. Until next time, focus on what truly matters and let go of what doesn't.